So something I find a lot of students struggle with is how to start a speech or a multimodal task. And, it can kind of sound a little bit boring to just be like, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or hi class, and teachers, today I'm going to talk to you about ... But at the same time, you also can't just stand and read an essay out, right? So how do you start with something that's engaging, but also make it formal enough and sophisticated enough to, get you a high band mark for your response? And one of the tips I'm going to provide today is how to start with a quote. And so what you want to do when you're looking up a quote is see if you can find something that's really related to the actual question, obviously, that you've been given. So I'm going to use an example. So we're going to use, just present here. Okay, cool. All right. So we're just going to use this particular question here, which is going to be a very typical one for narratives that shape our world for year 11. So narratives play a powerful role in questioning societal and cultural norms. Now, you may have seen something similar to this at some point because a lot of what students are studying is to do with narratives and narrative voice and styles and so forth, but very much prevalent in year 11 and 12. So what you want to do, so I've just done a really quick search. So I'm just going to go backwards because I found some really quotes. I literally just went quotes, narrative, enter, and then I've come up here, Goodreads. And anyway, there's a whole bunch you could go to, right? But I've just opened this one. And then, this can help too. So if you look at powerful or, like questioning, like someone look at some of those key terms, then I can go, I'm going to do a search for power here. Okay. So then I've come up with this particular quote here, and some of these are so good. Like I was pretty blown away when I was looking because I didn't expect them to be so good. But even if we start with the top bit here, because we know this is what this person's going to be talking about, truth for anyone is a very complex thing. For a writer, what you leave out says as much as those things you include. What lies beyond the margin of a text? The photographer frames a shot, writers frame their world. That's an awesome example of parallelism, which if you're ever doing persuasive or discursive writing is a really good technique to use. Look it up. But you can see that the actual structure of the sentence is very similar. So photographer frames the shot, writers frame the world. Anyway, you don't need to analyze that. You're just using a quote to get your your audience into your speech. So when we look at that particular that line there, it is, it's really looking at, when they say writers frame their world, it's a very powerful image about how writers and narratives are actually like shaping, or they've got the power to create worlds. And they really do, because if you actually think about it, things always show up in movies or in books or in stories before they ever happen in real life. It's that whole thing of like art mirroring life, if you've ever heard of that before. But anyway, this is, this kind of matches perfectly, if you think about it, to this whole thing about narratives play a powerful role, right? So we see that powerful role. And then in terms of questioning societal, social and cultural norms, it doesn't have to be included in the quote itself. Even if you've got something that kind of leads you in well, then you could bring in the whole questioning thing in later, and then talk about that specifically with your text, and then how that's actually questioning those particular norms. And then here, I believe in fiction and the power of stories, this gets a little bit obscure, so I wouldn't necessarily go further there. But I think, let's see if there was another one that used power. Here we go. All stories have a curious and even dangerous power. They are manifestations of truth, yours and mine. And truth is at once the most wonderful yet terrifying thing in the world. You must be very careful, or without knowing it, you can change the world. So that actually fits pretty well in with the question. And you're not going to use a lot of the quote. And just to give you an idea of how to incorporate a quote when you're starting, you can literally just start off by saying, as Vera Nazarian once stated, all stories have a curious and even dangerous power. They are manifestations of truth, yours and mine. Welcome, then you can do the whole welcome thing, or you could then be like, as we will see in this particular, these two texts, or whatever it is, then you're analyzing. So then like draw the quote in with what you're discussing, and then see if you can maybe refer to it like once or twice. That's kind of nice. But ultimately, if it links well to the question, then it's sort of self-explanatory. But it's a much more engaging way of starting a speech, rather than just saying, good afternoon, or today I'm going to talk to you about da da da.